Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about something that, for a lack of a better phrase, I'm going to call game development caution.
Timothy Cain has made the original Fallout game, which then got picked up by Bethesda. And he's telling stories about his experience from back then and now in the gaming industry. And I find this very interesting because this is what I feel like when I play games or when I see features in games like Diablo 4.
Before I start, I'm going to tell you three different stories. They're a little different, but then I'll tell you what I'm thinking about.
And the thing that I like most about him is because he's like level-headed. He does not seem like someone that would go out onto Twitter complaining about how Baldur's Gate 3 is too much of a good game.
Back when we made Fallout, towards the end, when we were really trying to get it out, we had two whiteboards. One whiteboard had a list of features or content that weren't done yet that really needed to get in. And the other whiteboard had a list of what the 10 most egregious bugs were. And next to each one of these, on these two different whiteboards, were listed the person who was assigned to it. We did it in a whiteboard like this so that people could come in the morning and look at it, because this predated Jira or Confluence or anything like that.
So basically they used whiteboards instead of something like this, right? Or Jira, right? And you have like a task, switch to OpenGL, and then you have like this guy next to it, right? Boom, boom, boom. It's literally like open. It's not like in some sort of a computer. It is open in the room, which I think is cool because you don't have to log in. You just see that all the time.
They could come in, look at the whiteboard and go, oh, I see something I need to jump on. Worked fine. I don't think I heard any complaint about it. People liked
what a concept,
getting stuff off of that. If they saw something, I was like, I'm on that today. Tried doing the exact same thing 10 years later at Carbine. Overwhelmingly, people said, no, do not do that. I will quit if you do that.
This is what I don't like. I know this is gonna piss off a lot of people, but this is what I hate or don't like about the gaming or game development community. It's entitled people like this that say stuff like that. Because not only are they entitled, they're also weak in, oh, I do not want to be held responsible for what I'm doing. I hate that. I hate that so much. And I know this is gonna piss off a lot of people, but I really hate that. Because this is why you get games like Diablo 4. This is exactly the reason. Like, they don't know what they're talking about and they don't want to be held responsible for what they're doing. But on top of that, they have the audacity to say, like, I'm gonna leave because I have such a high value. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have high value.
If I see my name on that whiteboard, I will quit. And I said, well, what if
I'm talking about the people that he's talking about. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about people that say, I'm gonna quit because you put up a whiteboard where someone can see my name and what task I'm doing.
Those names next to it. I'll still quit. People will know it's me.
Why are you running laps around his head with your mouse? Because he has a glorious beard.
When we were making the Outer Worlds, I wanted to put in, this is probably end of year 2, so we're still a year away. The combat AI wasn't really in yet, so I asked for a very simple combat aggression code to be added. This is how simple it was. Every time an NPC got shot, they would see if that person was on the list of someone who'd shot them. If they weren't, they'd add them to the list, with the amount of damage they just took. If they were already on the list, they'd just add the amount of damage they took. Yeah. Whenever they're deciding who to attack, they attack the person at the top of the list.
This is like an aggro table, right? This is not even difficult to do. You just have an array of units that hit you with like an ID. So basically an array of structure that holds an ID and an int for damage. And maybe the damage is so high that you have to do like a very big int. But that's all. And then you have this entry and you just like loop through this and like, oh, I didn't find one. Boom, add. It like takes like 10 minutes to do. You know, adding something to a list, it's literally array.add. And when someone inflicts damage on someone else, you have the person that is getting damaged on and the person that is inflicting damage on you. You both have them already present. It's very simple.
That's all I wanted.
Very simple.
Keep in mind, the advantage of that basic AI, you can make lots of changes later. You can make them that it has the one at the top of the list, if it's different than the person you're attacking, the damage has to exceed the damage of the person attacking you by a certain amount before you change targets.
And you know what you can do with this as well? You can target the last person on the list. You can target the one with the lowest damage. You can do some cool stuff with that. Like, this is really cool. Like, I didn't even think about that. I have something similar in my game where enemies will always target the last unit placed. And I just have a list of units, and the first unit in the list is the unit that got placed first. And the last unit in the list is the last unit that got placed. And you just index into these. It's very simple. It's a very simple approach. 20 to 30 years ago, I had enough liberty on my work to take the responsibility. Nowadays, projects are too much bigger, and it is difficult to give a full liberty to one person. And so responsibilities on a specific task. It's why I think this method does not work anymore. Is it because it's too many people? So it's too many people working on games. So a studio like Alarian Studios with 400 people is more likely to succeed than a studio with 9,000 people like Diablo 4. Because there's just too many people to work on. Array-oriented programming. Fuck the healers.
Take distance into account. You can take whether you can reach them into account, whether you have a ranged weapon into account. All that comes later. That's all I wanted. It got put into the programmer production query queue and came.
It's like it's a PPP. It's quite funny. Good funny name, guys. We put it into the PPP.
Back with an estimate of 4 weeks.
And this is insane. When like 4 weeks, guys, 4 weeks to add something into an array. More equals is not equal faster results. I know, more people. Yeah, I know. Games became a lot bigger, so need more people to do them. Obvious side effects for that is less co-op.
Pushed back, saying the code I asked for was very simple. I've written it before. Would take about 45 minutes. It's basically, there's already a callback when you get hit. That's when you look to put them on the list. And there's a callback. There's a call when you want to pick a target. That's when you look at the list and see which one you want to attack.
This is really like callback list. Yeah, like the callback would be, it's basically an inflict damage function. But yeah, it's like the callback, right? The function that happens when someone takes damage. It has like the unit that takes damage and then the unit that is inflicting the damage. And this is when you can look at the unit's ID and then look at your own array, right? And then you're like, oh no. Oh yeah, that's the ID plus equals damage. So very simple. Like, I don't even think it takes 45 minutes. Like, it's just a simple array add, and then the other one is just a loop through the list, and then like based on the condition, or not even a loop, because it's literally the first one in the array. You just have to make sure that it's sorted by the damage numbers. It's very simple. Array for this? Yeah, what else would you use other than an array? An array of units that have attacked you. Like something like this, like a hit targets array. It doesn't have to be 100 slots big, but something like that. And then you have like a unique identifier to find the unit, And if you want to make the lookup fast, you can store the index. Doesn't seem like a big deal to me. And then instead of just the ID, you'll have like maybe the ID and the int damage. You know how many players are interacting? Does the data need to be saved for the next session? Some details are missing here. Like, listen, like all of this doesn't really matter because all you have to do is add a number to the list if it doesn't exist, and then from a list of existing numbers you choose the highest number. That is the essence of what you have to do. As your job as a programmer is to be able to identify these things and then do these things.
The programmer who got signed to came to me and said, I need 4 weeks. And I'm like, why?
Just don't understand.
Because you don't understand. And I was like...
This is so funny, Like, this programmer is like, you don't understand, man. You don't understand, bro. You just don't understand the specifics. Like, listen to this again.
And I'm like, why? Walk me through what you're going to do. And he goes, you don't understand. And I was like,
I hate this. I hate this. Like, again, I'm sorry if I'm so blatant, but this is like, you don't understand, or what don't understand?
Coded this 3 times. Walk me through it. And he wouldn't. He left. He left angry. The lead programmer came back. Started.
Like this, to me, this is like a child. Like how a child would behave, not like a grown-up man or grown-up person. You know? Why am I so furious about this? Because games like Diablo 4 exist. Oh, we have to load every fucking stash tab for every person in the game. Because fuck you. And now please sort all of your items every time you go into a dungeon.
Lead programmer came back, started yelling at me, saying, if he says he needs 4 weeks, he needs 4 weeks. And I'm like, then I will do it. I'll have it done before lunch. And he said, no, because then people will have to support your code. I'm like, well, let me I'm going to walk you through what I want. And you tell me why this takes 4 weeks. He looked at what I wrote, which was about 10 lines of pseudocode on a whiteboard. And he goes, I'll come back. He came back.
It's like he's realizing, ooh, oh my God, no, maybe this guy is onto something here. Like 10 lines of code. Listen, guys, 4 weeks. How many days is that? 7 times 4? How many lines of code per day does this guy need to write? You know, like he's got time. He can play some games. It's awesome. He can do research for the game.
Back about an hour later and said, what about 2 weeks? And I said, do I have any options here? Fine.
It's like... It's so funny. It's about 28 days, yeah.
2 weeks.
Oh, man.
Story 3.
So yeah, this guy so far seems like it's not the publishers and the executives, you know, and the managers. I can see what you mean, right? He's making it seem like it is only the programmer's fault. And I do understand, and I also want to point that out. Like, yes, obviously, the programmers can only do so much with the time they are given and with what the managers tell them to do and how they're supposed to do that, obviously, right? Because this is the unfortunate part of it, that the marketing people, the managers, they have the power. They decide what sells and what not, and they don't care. Like if you need time to write something good that is not buggy, you know. And I can understand that, you know. Like I get it. But like this example is definitely not the only example of this happening. And unfortunately, I do not want to shit on the 2 women that played Diablo 4. But have you seen the 2 women play Diablo 4? These developers, they don't know what their own game is about anymore. And that is really sad. Really, really sad to see. Because we are the people that play it. We spend the money on the game and we get disappointed at the expense of the company. They get their money and we just have to like pick up the scraps, and then we don't have to play it, right? But we get disappointed, we get let down, and it's sad, very sad to see.
Talk about features all the time, whether it's dialogues or system mechanics or story setting. We get very into it.
So he's talking to another person here, but he's talking to a friend of his, and they are talking about the game, you know. Like they get very excited talking about the game, what features they could add, you know. That's what he's saying.
Our voices may be raised. We're jumping out of our chairs to draw things on whiteboards. We're pacing back and forth. I know I've mentioned this before, but Anthony Davis showed up at our door and said, "You guys have to stop yelling. Everybody's getting nervous. It's like mom and dad are yelling at each other." Still don't know who he meant was mom, but we explained that's just us talking. We're not mad, but we're trying to tease apart exactly what to do, and we're getting into it. So, what do those 3 stories have to do with each other? I'm starting to see in the industry, I shouldn't say starting, in the last decade, the last quarter of my career, I'm starting to see this rise of what I can only call development caution, an abundance of caution, of padding estimates, time estimates, of what do you...
It's like padding DPS, you know, in a raid. Oh, it's so fucking funny. Oh my god. I don't know why this is so funny to me, but... We need to start rushing things. Listen. I'm not saying rush things, okay? I'm all about quality. This is the reason why I'm so happy. You know, Molly, rocket. It's the reason why this was so helpful. Like this channel right here. You know, Handmade Hero was very, very inspiring to see what he did, you know, all of the videos that he did. And then Jonathan Blow, finding out what he did, you know, and then what he talks about. And then basically the message is that you will not be able to write the perfect code the first time. And you will not be able to think of the perfect solution the first time. But if you sit down and make a code change or make the stuff that you want to make, even if it's not the perfect solution, you still have made something. And we are so scared of just touching anything that we don't know what to do. And it's especially true when you get into a language like C++, where there's vastly different opinions based on what people perceive to be correct and incorrect. And it is, in my opinion, it is inhibiting the our ability to make advance, or to advance into a direction of getting something done. And this is why these people have been so helpful for me personally. And I can only recommend, you know, watching what they have to say and thinking about what they have to say. Basically, the message is, you just sit down and do shit. You do something, and then you will see if it works out for you or not. If you make a mistake, you have learned from your mistake and you move on. But 4 weeks just to add something to an array and then hopefully I don't make any problems or don't make any mistakes, like just fucking do it and then be done with it. And you know, we can always go back. The message is, don't be afraid to write shit code. The message is to explore and to free yourself from the doubts of what is the right and big thing to do. Comes out the same. And yeah, the message, yeah, it is essentially don't be afraid to write shit code, because that's the great thing about code. It is not a house that you build. You can rebuild the house multiple times. And this is what he's talking about here. Unfortunately, this is what he's talking about.
Go around and check with a lot of people to see if something's okay. Asking, should we do this? I'm not sure. Let's have a meeting.
Well, I think what he's talking about here is also inexperience. Since the industry has grown, like I was the same when I started in my first year. I was so unsure whether I should do something or not. And I think it's just natural. But the problem is that these companies are so big, they have so many of these people. Because they're all unsure, because they're all new. And this is why I think, you know, companies like Diablo 4, like Blizzard, when it comes to Diablo 4, you see the result.
Frequently, people would want to have a meeting to discuss something, and those were the very people who would say, we have too many meetings. I can't get any work done. Now,
oh my God.
Caution can be a really good thing if it leads to less bugs, less stress. Also, I get the fact that because games cost more now, people are approaching it with this sense of caution, because you're not just going to be out a little bit of money, you're going to be out a lot of money.
I mean, but why does a developer have to care? Like, I'm just a developer of a game. I'm supposed to make features. I don't understand why would you as a developer care about the money spent on the product? You're not spending the money, you're just getting paid for your job.
If this game doesn't do well. The thing that worries me, though, is games can also be a lot worse because of caution. And everybody who's cautious kind of denies that. They're like, no, we're reducing bugs, we're increasing work balance. People are less stressed. And I'm like, true, but you're also taking a lot less risk in a game, which in many games I think give them less charm. And yeah, even games that have jank have a lot of charm. My games have had jank. I know people talk about jank in other games, you know, things where the AI acts in a bizarre way.
You know, a big example of that is Vampire Survivors. And by jank, I mean the enemies can clip through walls. But no one cares. It's not correct. No one cares though. And they actually want that in the game. You glaze Vampire Survivors too hard? It's an example. It's one example. that I think of. Jank Immo must be exception, not the rule. Yeah, it's obviously it is. A jank is not like the rule, right? But there's like, how many of you know of the game that you played as a kid where you have this one bug that is quite funny, right? For example, in Skyrim, there was this one bug when Dance Gaming was walking out of a house, and then behind him he had this follower called Indigo, right? It's a cat, like a Khajiit. And he would just look at the cat, and then all of a sudden his feet would start to turn like this, right? They would turn like this. And it would look like he would dance. And then all of a sudden, like, his knees would be like, And then he would, like, all of a sudden he would levitate and then fly and shoot up into the sky. You know? That was so fucking funny. I still remember, this clip unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, but man, that was so fucking funny.
In certain circumstances, or NPCs say weird things or do weird things, it can be charming. But things have changed, and I know games have gone from being an expression of an idea of like artwork from a particular person or group of people into a corporate driven money seeking instrument.
Yeah, that's basically Diablo 4. For example, Diablo Immortal, Diablo 4. That's basically it. But this is why we have indie games. And this is why the Unity outrage is such a big deal, you know? Because this corporate greed is now infesting, slowly sipping into the indie development industry. And we have to save that. Made in Unity? Yeah, made in Unity.
And I get it. There's a lot of money going into these. In a way, though, I would argue they always were. You always were making these with the idea that, you know, I hope it sells a lot and we make money. But now designs are being driven by this. That's why we have microtransactions. It's why we have pre-orders. It's why we have what we're starting to see lately, where games are, if you pay a little more, you can play it a few days or even a week early.
Payday 3. Payday 3, I heard. The same thing.
You can't always blame the publishers or the developers for this. If people didn't pay for it, they wouldn't do it. It's like spam. If everybody stopped answering
Paycheck
spam
3.
tomorrow, it would go away. But because a tiny percentage does, it's there for everybody to see.
Yep. I don't even think it's a tiny percentage. It's all the average shows. They're like, oh, I can play the game faster. Why not, bro?
So I'm not really talking about the money-driven part. I'm talking about how the caution is dampening down the ideas. It's why I'm going to double down on this. I've always thought the indie space is a lot richer in ideas. Probably not money, certainly not money, but they're much richer in ideas because they take less. They have less caution and take a lot more risk.
Yeah, oftentimes as an indie developer, you also obviously you have either you have money left over, or you basically work on your game and you work on your job at the same time, right? Which obviously splits your attention, but often that's how people get started, right?
AAAs that dip into indie games for features and ideas. By the way, it's not just publishers and developers that I see all this caution with. I've seen a huge rise in caution in game journalism. It's become the norm that
it's not risky because your livelihood doesn't depend on it yet, at least not for a big part.
An embargo situation where they're not given an early access code, so they can't write their reviews earlier than other people. They're worried about not being invited to press events.
Like, how many of you trust the, reviews of press when it comes to games, for example? Not at all. Yeah, I don't. Never looked at them. Yeah, I don't look at them either. I don't even understand why people even don't trust since 2019. 29, yeah. Not once, yeah. I just don't understand how people even take this into consideration. I go to IGN videos to see comments. But I have to say, IGN is stepping it up lately.
Kits, I think they're called. So a lot of them have gone a lot more cautious in what they say. I really miss the reviews. I'll name a couple.
Yeah, I mean, the reviews are now YouTubers. The past publications that did reviews because they didn't get paid, this is now the YouTubers. So how many of you guys go to YouTubers for reviews? How many of you guys watch a YouTuber to know if a game is good or not? Only Rule 34, Twitch does the job. Twitch does the job, yeah. Another emote face. This one right here.
In the 80s and 90s, and devlog in the 90s and early 2000s. Because those two reviewers said what they thought. If you put out a game, they skewer you for all the things that were wrong with it, but then they praise you for everything that's right with it. Now it's sort of like, well, we really like this, but they don't want to like really double down on it because it may be something people don't like. So like, let's say a journalist loves the diversity in a game, he may go, well, I'm not going to say that. And they're really just trying to go for what kind of review can I write that generates the most
It's more
clicks?
PG, yeah. They're trying to cater to the advertisers.
I guess this worries me because if I see this everywhere, if I see this in publishers and developers and now new people entering the industry, they don't have this passion anymore.
Yeah, we have YouTube
So,
left.
you know,
That's why I love YouTube.
I want to tell people, just go and make it. Make what you want. You don't need a committee to sign off on it. You can always go back and change it. Or
Yeah, exactly. That's what he's saying right here. This is the message that Jonathan Blow and Casey Muratori have. Just fucking do it.
Unsalvageable, throw it away.
Yeah.
But that rapid iteration.
And this is rapid iteration. You're making many mistakes, but you're learning so much. It's insane how much you learn. It's insane how much I learned in the past 2 years. I've grown so much. Look at my Pong game. It's terrible. It's atrociously bad. And look at the games that I can create now. It's been 2 years.
To some really good ideas, a lot better than just being so cautious that you basically creep up to a very mundane game that doesn't show any kind of passion in its development. People can tell. So I started with stories. Let me end with those 3 stories and how they kind of got resolved. So I didn't even try to do the whiteboard solution when I made Outer Worlds. What I did is I made my own Confluence page called, like, I was Tim Kane's top 10 or something. It was in my Confluence space, and I wrote, here's
So
the
basically
10
you made it
biggest
online.
things I want looked at this week. And there were a few producers who would look at that page all the time. What was great about this solution, nobody could come and complain to me about it because it was in my Confluence space. My own personal.
So people had to go to him and then into his space. Because it
Also,
was
I'd like to
probably
point out that
public, but
anybody
on
can
his.
Go to Jira at any time and say, what are the 10 most highly prioritized bugs and who are they assigned to? So we already had that whiteboard virtually, but somehow it was okay that it wasn't called attention to. For the combat aggression code, I think I settled on 2 weeks, and I think it got done faster than that. Great, I got it.
would have thought he got it done, in 1 week, boys. It was 1 week in the end.
I don't think I asked for anything after that. I didn't go and specifically ask for anything because I realized that I was being viewed as some sort of ogre when I knew something could be done faster, and there was no solution to it, which is why years ago I started thinking, ooh, this is becoming a problem. Same thing with Leonard and I yelling at each other. We just kept doing it. We're like, it's our office. We're shut the door. We're not mad at each other, but this is the way we get things done.
Give that developer a raise.
Noted that some people don't like it. We won't get things done like that with you. And let me tell you, I think there were people who felt like they missed out on not being parts of those conversations.
I would have loved to talk to these guys, I'm really excited when it comes to this stuff as well. I have to keep myself in check oftentimes because I'm programming on my game solo, and then there's so many cool ideas, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't do this all alone, I gotta stop dreaming. But yeah, I would have loved to talk to these guys.
Some people would come over. Charlie had his office right next door, and he would the lead designer on Outer Worlds, and he would come in sometimes and join in. Great. Other people didn't do that. You missed out. And I think you missed out on some really fun, active, engaging conversations about game development. But that's the way things are going. So I'm not sure I have a great solution other than reminding people to be passionate. But I just kind of want to talk about this because it kind of ties into bigger teams and longer development time and bigger budgets, just this whole game development.
I have a feeling that it's just, how many of you can completely identify with what a developer does, or what a person like Bobby Kotick on the top of the food chain decides for your game? How many of you could could identify with that route that you're supposed to go, you know, when you're just there to make a good game. I think over time you would just grow sad that it's just not going the way you want it to go and you have no power to change that. That's what I have a feeling of. And so most often they just don't care and they leave the office at 5 and they're like, okay, day's over.
Caution that's rising up in the industry. So there, whew, got that off my chest.
Fortunately, there are some other studios that don't do this. And it looks like studios like Galarian Studios is one of them. But yeah, I think I found this very interesting. I wanted to share that with you because I mean, we're making games. Like most of us are making games. So most of us want to make games. And we want to play good games, right? That's the reason why we make games. If you're not self-employed, the workday ends after 8 hours. Yep.